Grandma, help me!
Suddenly, in the middle of the night, I heard the voice of a child at the front door. Standing there was my 13-year-old granddaughter, her clothes in tatters. What on earth happened? I hurriedly brought her inside, where she was trembling uncontrollably. As I listened to her story, she revealed one terrifying fact after another. Anger surged within me at what I heard, and I decided to storm into my son and daughter-in-law's house with a group of companions. Faced with the large group seeking revenge, my son and his wife turned pale. Now, let the punishment begin. I lost my husband shortly after giving birth to my son, Jason, and had raised him all by myself ever since. Even now, at 57, I continue working at the cafeteria that hired me as a single mother, where everyone calls me the lunch lady.
Grandma, let's cook again today.
My granddaughter Emma would come running to my house after school, out of breath. With her long black hair flowing behind her, her tall and slender figure, and a perfectly straight nose, she looked like a model. When she smiled, her cat-like eyes became her charming feature. She was kind-hearted and a granddaughter I was proud of, but the truth is, Emma and I aren't related by blood. My son and his wife lived just a 10-minute walk from my house, having married a year ago. It was Jason's first time having a family, but his wife, Amy, had been married before. Yes, my granddaughter is Amy's daughter from her previous marriage. Oh, welcome. Did you let your parents know before coming?
Yeah. They're both at work, but I sent them a message, so it's fine.
When I called out to Emma as she arrived, she cheerfully responded while taking off her shoes at the entrance. It was thanks to cooking that we became this close. When my son first got married, my granddaughter seemed to be avoiding me, not even meeting my gaze. I understood, given how complicated the family situation was. So, I decided not to visit Jason's house and quietly watched over things from a distance. However, 3 months after my son got married, Emma came to visit me.
Grandmother, could you teach me how to cook?
She asked me in such a formal tone that I couldn't help but chuckle. As I later found out, Amy, my daughter-in-law, had also worked full-time in her previous marriage, and Emma had been the one taking care of the household chores. One day, she overheard Jason say,
"My mom works in a university cafeteria, so she's practically a professional cook."
That's what prompted Emma to come to me as a kind of apprentice. Since then, we began cooking dinner together every 2 weeks. Back then, she used to call me grandmother, but now it's grandma. I'm so glad she's become fond of me. I squinted my eyes as I recalled that day.
Hey, Grandma. Today's menu is fried chicken, right? I'm scared of frying things because the oil splatters. I wonder if I can do it well.
Actually, I know a great trick for that.
Really? Tell me.
We laughed and chatted as we headed to the kitchen. An hour later, we had made a whole spread of dishes, not just fried chicken. Emma, have you lost weight again? As she arranged the meal on the living room table, her back seemed even thinner than before. I had noticed over time that she was losing weight each time I saw her. But whenever we cooked and ate dinner together, Emma would eat with great appetite. "You're not getting enough food every day, are you?" Jason's not very attentive. I muttered in an irritated tone as I served her another helping. She was quiet for a moment but soon smiled.
I'm the one doing the cooking, and I eat properly.
Oh, right. You're the one serving the food, so I bet you sneakily cut down on the stuff you don't like, huh? I chuckled and winked at her. She nodded slightly and returned a small smile. You're still growing, so it makes sense that what you eat goes into your height, not your width. I thought of the students at the cafeteria where I worked. Some came back for seconds and thirds. Some cried at graduation because they wouldn't be able to eat my food anymore, and some still came back even after graduating. They all grew taller or built muscle. They really grew up. I looked at my granddaughter closely again. Her figure, more mature than most adults, was stunning, and I had heard she'd been using her height to play basketball since elementary school. But when her parents remarried, and she entered middle school, Emma quit, saying she had no talent. At the time, I called my son and said, Emma might have quit her club because she's holding herself back, so make sure to be considerate. Jason, sounding unsure, mumbled,
I'm not really good at talking about that stuff.
And then, to my surprise, he added,
Emma's gotten too feminine, and it's troubling.
I was shocked and fell silent over the phone, and sensing that, Jason quickly corrected himself.
I mean, she looks too much like her mother.
I was relieved when I heard that, as if it happened just yesterday. Well, I guess there's no way anything inappropriate could happen with a 13-year-old. I muttered to myself as I picked at the fried chicken with my granddaughter. At that moment, I had no idea. I had no idea that something terrifying had already begun. About a week after the day Emma and I cooked together.
Grandma, help me!
Late at night, my granddaughter came to my house with her clothes torn to shreds. What happened? Just come inside for now. Shocked by the sight before me, I hugged her tightly. Once I led her to the living room, she collapsed onto the sofa, seemingly relieved.
Dad.
Her voice trembled as she whispered, her eyes filled with tears. As she slowly revealed the horrifying truth, anger clouded my mind. How could he do such a terrible thing? I won't forgive him. I wanted to call the police right away, but unfortunately, there was no evidence. However, there was no way I could just leave my granddaughter in tears. Emma, leave it to Grandma. I'll make sure to teach him a lesson. With that, I decided to seek revenge using some connections I had. About 30 minutes later, my phone rang.
Do you know where Emma is? She's not at home.
Though I was furious, I pretended to stay calm. Oh. Did she go out this late? Have you asked her friends? I played innocent, acting as if it was the first I'd heard of it.
Yeah. She's been difficult lately, going through a rebellious phase. If she comes to your place, let me know.
She's at that age where she's defiant. Please don't take anything she says too seriously.
In the middle of the conversation, Amy cut in, her voice tense with worry. I understand. It's just her age. Kids go through these things. Hearing this, my son and his wife, thinking I knew nothing, sounded relieved as they ended the call. I know exactly what you've done to my granddaughter. Immediately, I contacted one of my friends and began gathering evidence. Now, it's time for some serious payback. 4 days later, on a slightly chilly morning, I called my son to let him know that Emma had been found and went to see him.
Mom! Thank you for finding Emma. Wait, what?
At the entrance, Jason's face showed confusion as he saw me standing there, expressionless, holding a paper bag. Amy frowned too, but led me into the living room. As I sat at the table, I glared sharply at both of them. Emma said she never wants to see you two again. My cold words made their eyes widen in shock.
What? What did she tell you?
Though Jason spoke with anger in his voice, I could sense the unease behind it, as only a mother could. She quit basketball because of you too, didn't she? You told her you wouldn't pay for the club fees of a stepchild, didn't you?
Oh, so that's what this is about, basketball.
He clearly looked relieved and even let out a chuckle.
She's been all over the place lately, you know? First, she says she wants to play, then she changes her mind. She never even submitted the form to join.
Amy leaned forward as she spoke, her small frame contrasting with Emma's tall one. So, you're saying Emma's lying?
Of course she is. Who would do something terrible to such a sweet kid?
When he said sweet kid, I twitched, my eyebrows raising. Are you also saying the part about not feeding her properly is a lie? When I shot back, they both briefly averted their eyes.
Well, maybe she just said that to get attention, you know, with her rebellious phase and all.
Amy, clearly flustered, kept repeating the phrase rebellious phase. Like losing 7 kilos is something that just happens. I pulled some documents from the paper bag and slammed them onto the table. Laid out before them were records of Emma's physical exams from 5th grade, 6th grade, and her first year of middle school. While her height had increased during this time, her weight had actually dropped 7 kilos less than when she was in 5th grade. I then took out Emma's diary from the bag, filled with horrifying entries. One read, I only get 1 meal a day, and another, since I make my own lunch, I can only use scraps. But this is all I have to eat, my lifeline. I began reading these entries aloud to Jason and Amy. You let her handle all the cooking. And when she snuck a bite of food out of hunger, you punished her by not feeding her for 3 days? I pointed to specific parts of the diary as I shouted at them. One passage, written in tear-blurred ink, said, I can't even take 1 bite of the delicious food in front of me.
Wait a minute, Mom. Where did you get all this?
Sweat poured down Jason's face as he tried to interrupt me. From your house, of course. 3 days ago, Emma gave me the house key, and I came over while you two were at work.
What? Taking things from someone's home without permission, even if you're family, is just wrong. It's so low class.
Amy tried to deflect by calling me a thief. Parents who don't feed their child have no right to talk about family. I roared, and Amy fell silent, her face pale as a ghost. I had been staying away from this house because you have a stepchild of your own. Because of that, I didn't notice my granddaughter's suffering sooner. I recalled Emma's painfully thin arms, and my chest ached. She could have told me at any time, but she kept quiet, thinking that if she endured it, her mom would be happy. And you call that a rebellious phase? Don't be ridiculous. My lips quivered with a mixture of sorrow and anger, my voice shaking. I was furious at myself for not saving her sooner.
Look, blended families are complicated. Mom, you've been a carefree single mother with just you and me. You wouldn't understand how tough it is.
Exactly. And Emma's freakishly tall, just like my ex-husband. That nose, those cat eyes. Watching your child resemble someone you absolutely hate. It makes my skin crawl.
Amy's mock vomiting made my heart sink.
To be honest, I've never been interested in raising another man's child either.
It seemed Jason, following Amy's lead, let his true feelings slip. I couldn't believe my ears. Their words made me feel faint. So you ripped my granddaughter's clothes and did something terrible to her because she's not your own child? Do you think that makes it okay?
Her clothes? Ah. They just got caught on something and tore. I mean, I wasn't having any inappropriate thoughts.
Jason stammered, speaking quickly as soon as the topic of her clothes came up.
That's just a gross misunderstanding. Or maybe you're just frustrated.
Amy sneered, and Jason chuckled nervously alongside her.
Look, I'm trying my best to raise someone else's kid. Families go through tough times, and sometimes clothes accidentally tear, right?
Exactly. Emma said she wants me to be happy. Things will get better eventually. So just keep quiet and let us handle it like you've been doing.
Amy heavily emphasized keep quiet, and Jason nodded in agreement. Despite all the evidence I had laid out, they continued to play dumb. My patience snapped. Then explain this. I pulled out a recorder from the paper bag and pressed play. Immediately, Amy's voice, followed by a sigh, could be heard.
I just want to have a child with you.
Then Jason's complaint.
It's hard to think about having our own kid with Emma's middle school tuition weighing us down.
And then, in a low, chilling voice, Jason added,
I was going to make it look like she was attacked by a robber and get rid of her, but she escaped.
Amy's voice followed.
Next time we find her, she's definitely going to the other side.
When she came to my house that night, her clothes were torn to make it look like an attack. You two were trying to end her life. I slammed my fist on the table and leaned in toward the now panicking pair. That day, my tearful granddaughter had confessed that Jason had torn her clothes in a fit of rage, and Amy, instead of helping, had readied a knife. Sensing her life was in danger, Emma had taken advantage of a moment when Jason wasn't looking to escape and run to my house, barely making it out alive. You two won't get away with this. I glared at Jason and Amy, my eyes burning with rage.
This conversation, I don't remember anything like it.
No! Mom, maybe you've mistaken this for some TV show recording or something.
Their voices had shrunk, knowing how weak their excuses were. Of course not. When I came to get my diary 3 days ago, I planted a bug. To throw you both in jail. As I proudly declared this, their faces immediately grew tense.
Are you seriously thinking of calling the police?
Amy glared up at me, her voice low. Jason glanced at Amy, and she gave a small, resolute nod. Then suddenly,
Get rid of the old hag before Emma!
Jason shot up from his seat with a loud bang, rounded the table, and lunged at me. Ah! I screamed, and the next moment, Nancy, a voice shouted as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the entrance. Yes. My name is Nancy. As the thunderous noise closed in like a landslide, Jason froze in shock, and a group of strong men barged into the living room.
Protect Nancy. Restrain them, but don't hurt them.
Someone shouted, and the others responded loudly, Yes, sir. In no time, Jason and Amy were pinned to the floor.
Hey! Who the hell are you?
How many of you are there?
Surrounded by muscular men, the two were pale with fear. Ignoring them, one of the young men who had been shouting orders ran up to me.
Are you all right?
Thank you. I'm so glad I asked you for help. You can always count on former students. You see, I work at the cafeteria of a prestigious sports university that produces professional athletes, and these bodybuilder-like men were alumni. Many of the students grew fond of me for looking after them during their tough training, and even after graduation, we stayed in touch. When I asked one of the graduates, who had become a lawyer, for help, a whole group of them gathered. They helped with everything, from court preparations, to planting the bug, to finding a counselor to heal my granddaughter's emotional wounds. On the day I confronted Jason, many of them took time off work to accompany me, saying,
We'll come along, just in case.
And when they heard the sounds from my hidden radio, realizing I was in danger, they stormed in from the entrance.
What the hell? You're just cafeteria staff.
Let go of me!
As soon as they realized their captors were just former students, the two began to scream and complain. Then, one of the men flashed his lawyer badge.
We've got people well versed in law, strong arms, and even some military personnel.
He leaned down and gave them a cold smile. At the mention of the military, Jason and Amy turned pale and started trembling. Unlike you two, we don't do anything dangerous. I sighed as I said this, and they seemed to relax a bit. But this wasn't the end. However, you'll be making amends. You'll pay $20,000 in damages for my grandchild, and $5,500 for child support. I'm also consulting with a lawyer about transferring custody to me. I declared firmly to my son and his wife, who were still pinned to the floor.
What?
Jason's voice cracked at the sudden demand for such a large sum of money. But the men holding them down said things like,
This guy doesn't deserve to be a parent.
or,
Let's make sure she wins custody.
Nancy! This is too much. We're just taking our first steps as a family. How can you do this?
I admit, I didn't know how to raise a kid, and I made some mistakes. But please, watch over our family.
Crawling on the floor, they kept apologizing, repeating the word family. Really? You made the kid do housework, starved them, didn't let them join any clubs, and in the end, tried to get rid of them because they were in your way. That's your idea of family? I snorted and gave Jason and Amy a look of pure contempt. The lawyer, one of the alumni, who had been listening, added with a sharp tone.
They even tried to get rid of Nancy. Unbelievable.
The other alumni chimed in.
You're a million years too early to be talking about family.
And
I'll whip you into shape myself.
their deep, authoritative voices boomed, scolding my son and daughter-in-law. Overwhelmed by the terrifying men surrounding them, the two began sobbing uncontrollably. Just as the graduates were shaking their heads in disgust, saying, "What a pitiful sight," the police, whom they had called before storming in, arrived. "Repent for what you've done. I'll never forgive either of you." With those final words, I handed the villains over to the officers. Afterward, my son and his wife went to trial for the abuse they inflicted on their child. The lawyer, one of the former students, said,
Nancy did a great job gathering all the evidence. They won't be able to weasel their way out of this.
"It looks like they'll face severe punishment, and I'll be gaining custody of my grandchild." The alumni have also offered their continued support, saying,
We'll help you collect the damages and child support whenever you need.
Jason and Amy will likely live a miserable life of poverty, struggling to repay their debts while being bossed around by intimidating men. As for Emma, she's now living with me. Thanks to a regular and healthy diet, she's returned to a fit and healthy body. She's in middle school now and has joined the basketball team she always wanted to be part of, becoming one of the star players.
I want to go to the same university as those alumni who saved me. And I'll eat Grandma's cooking at the cafeteria.
Her beaming smile is the greatest nourishment for my soul. I'm not ready to retire just yet. I'll keep going strong. How did you like today's story? Don't forget to hit subscribe. See you in the next video.